Hey Ecofictologists, my name is Lovis and welcome back to my author update series. Today I am in my swinging hanging egg chair with my cup of tea to talk to you about that moment that all authors fear when they read an already published novel that is just that little bit too close to their own work in progress to be entirely comfortable. And of course, this novel always seems like it's better written and harder hitting than their own work. I had this moment about a year ago now, and I just thought it would be nice to reflect on some of the things that have helped me move my book from where it was a year ago to where it is now, and hopefully some of the things that helped me will also help you. First of all, let's talk about why this is such a depressing and demotivating moment. I think it comes down to us writers being obsessed with this idea of originality, that if we don't come up with something that nobody has ever seen before, we're never going to make it. Words like unoriginal or derivative are the kiss of death for us. They can immediately douse the flame of excitement for a project. And we look up to successful authors like they've cracked the code and they've got a secret formula. We always ask them, where do you get your ideas from? How do you come up with your stories? Like they're going to give us an easy way out. So when you read a book that is much like your own, it's very easy to then think, well, I can't write my novel now. It's been done. No one is going to want to read it. This can be completely debilitating and can stop you from finishing anything. I know, because that's exactly how I felt. I had this moment when I read Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, which is about a girl who, at its core, it's about a lot of things. It's a magnificent book. But at its core, it's about a girl who discovers her powers in a society where magic is shunned and hated. That sounded quite familiar to me. And I was completely distraught. This idea that I was so fond of, that I had so much excitement for, lost all of its potential like that. As soon as I realized that there was something already out there that shared my premise. But then my partner, always trying to calm me down when I get hysterical, reminded me that Children of Blood and Bone is also not the first book to have that premise. But it is still a gripping story with an immersive world that lots of readers enjoy reading. I had a few more moments like this. Basically, I realized that what I had was a cross between Children of Blood and Bone and some elements of the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, and my magic system was basically the Force. So I had some work to do. I am happy to report that I have moved on from that particular low point, and I wanted to share with you a couple of the things that helped me do so. Comparing where my story is now to where it was is actually quite cool, because I'm realizing that I'm not so worried anymore about its originality. Like I'm aware of it and I'm trying to push myself, but I'm not anxious about it. Like I'm not in that point where I think, oh, I might as well give up because it's not original, even though there are elements in it that are by no means new. This takes a lot of the pressure and the anxiety out of writing, which makes writing easier in the long run. So hopefully some of these things help you. So the first thing that helped me was that it was actually quite comforting to see this topic of originality covered on pretty much every writing podcast or advice website or AuthorTube channel. Clearly, I was not the only one who was experiencing this or worried about this. And even more comforting was that all of these resources seem to agree on the remedy, which is to not expect originality of yourself because everything has already been done. There are no original stories left, so don't put that pressure on yourself. Just tell the story you want to tell without expecting to come up with something that no one has ever thought of before. So at first I was like, okay, take a breath, have a cup of tea. Maybe I can still write my story, even if it's not new and original, which looking back, I don't know how I thought that that simple premise was going to be new and original, but that's how it was. But then I started thinking of my favorite books and even books that I enjoyed reading, even if they didn't make my favorites lists. And I realized that some of them do share the same premise, but they still feel original. So there must be a way to still make your story feel original to the reader, even if the premise has been done before. The piece of advice that really gave me my light bulb moment was from Patrick Rothfuss, who's one of my favorite fantasy authors. I watched lots of panel discussions with him and interviews with him, and invariably he is asked, where do you get your ideas from? How do you make an original fantasy world? All of these types of questions. And his answer is always, write what you geek out about. You might have heard another version of this advice, which is write what you know. And I think if that is interpreted in a certain way, then it's great advice. If it's interpreted as use your expertise to make a story unique in a way that nobody else can, then I think it's really great. But it should never actually be used to limit what you can write. But write what you geek out about brings something very important to the table, and that is passion. If you hand 5 authors the same premise, they will give you 5 wildly different stories if they infuse them with what they each are passionate about. And that's the point, isn't it? Even if your premise isn't original, your execution can be, your world building can be. Your premise might not be, but you are. So if you put what you love into your book, that's going to lend it an element of originality that nobody else can give it. When I realized that I had quite a bit of work to do in the originality department, I kind of went back to the drawing board, and every step of the way I kept this piece of advice in mind. What am I passionate about? I love ecology. I'm passionate about reducing our impact on our environment. And I think that we as a species, so highly evolved and capable, have the capacity to do so much more good than what we're doing. So I went back over my outline and what I had written up to that point, and I made sure that each of my plot points was informed by one of these things. I made the tension leading up to the inciting incident be brewing resentment within the society about negative environmental impacts of industrial processes, and I maintained that tension throughout the story. I developed my culture and industry to make sense with the ecology that I had designed, including what metals were going to be found there, and the type of agriculture that would be possible on this kind of landscape. I changed my magic system so that it made a statement about some of these core things, and made sure that it had hard ecological rules. And even though my project is nowhere near finished, and I'm sure I will continue to develop it for quite a long time, it is already leaps and bounds better than it was. So I'm incredibly grateful that I had that moment that I was so afraid of, because if I hadn't, maybe I would never have been pushed to this position where I think, what more can I do with this? By injecting my passions into my world building, I created enough interest in other aspects of the story to make it feel more developed. My story is still about a girl who discovers her powers in a society where magic is shunned and hated. My premise hasn't changed, but everything around my premise has changed. Now the society is more developed, the setting is more developed, I gave a twist to my magic system that makes it different enough from the Force that I get away with it. And my plot focuses on things that send a message that I am passionate about. Now, this search for originality can be quite a slippery slope. It can become a never-ending search for originality. So it was good for me to realize that if I focused on a few things and developed those and put more interest in those, then I could keep my premise and keep the story I wanted to tell, even if it had elements that were similar to other works that are out there. and it's not the end of the world. And sometimes you don't even want to be completely original, because sometimes it's comforting for the reader to read the blurb on the back of the book and think, oh, this sounds really similar to something else that I loved. Maybe I'll love this too. Common tropes, ideas, and themes, these are what make a genre. So giving the reader expected elements of a romance or a fantasy, sci-fi, murder, mystery can be good. So remember to cut yourself some slack. Don't expect the impossible of yourself. Stay true to your story that you want to tell, but don't be afraid to see where you can push yourself a little bit. Do what you can and your readers will appreciate it. Okay, well, that's all from me today. I hope that some of these pieces of advice that really helped me move on from quite a low point help you as well, has maybe reduced some of the pressure you've put on yourself if you did have unrealistic expectations, and maybe has even inspired you to see which elements of your story you can dial up a little bit. It is so easy to give up on a work in progress at this point if you feel like there's nothing original about it. So I hope this video has convinced you not to give up on yours, because I'm really glad that I didn't give up on mine. I quite like it. And if I had given up, it would have been so sad. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want more trips down author memory lane like this, or if you want to follow my world building journey, or even branch out into some eco-fiction, then subscribe to my channel and click the bell so you get notified every time I post new content. If you like what I do and would like to support me, head on over to patreon.com/ecofictology, where your monthly donation not only buys me books to read, which I love, but also helps support a marine conservation organization called Love the Oceans, operating out of Mozambique. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.